All right, you're seeing it?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Apologies for letting you all in 1 minute late. We're having a couple technical difficulties getting our PowerPoint set up here today. Mostly straightened out. I will be screen sharing on behalf of Karen this afternoon. So Karen, whenever you're ready to go to the next slide, please just say next slide and I will be clicking through.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let me just tell everyone that
Okay.
the chat on the right-hand side of your screen is where you can answer questions for Karen, questions of Karen and ask questions of Karen as we move through the presentation today. Super excited for this. Thank you so much for joining Karen and everyone else in our audience here today. Karen, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited to speak to the maintenance community about how to influence people, because this is like such an important topic. And before I tell you a little bit about myself, I just want you to consider, I know most of you may work in a technical profession in a maintenance position, but really what you will learn here today can be used in any aspect of life. You can influence your spouse. Maybe you have teenage children where this can become super important. And yeah, family, friends. So in every aspect of life, important. Two things I would ask you from the get-go. I believe it's so important to set the intention when you come to a webinar. So I don't want you to say, I know that, because the moment you say, I know that, the blinds go down and you are not able to take in new information. So instead of that, say, what can I learn from that? And the second thing that I would ask you to do, please don't say, this won't work for me. Say instead, how can I make this work for me? And then this will be really something that you can use going forward. I try to provide a lot of value the next 45 minutes. Hopefully, most of you have a notebook with you to take some notes, a pen. You will need that also in a little while, because we will do a little exercise together. I want to make it a little bit interactive. And yeah, we go from there. So Heather, if you could switch to the next slide. I would like to tell you a little bit about myself and what qualifies me to speak here to you today. This is me when I was little. I was always a child who liked to take action. And I grew up in Austria in quite a small village that you can see here. My parents still live there to this day. My parents owned a construction business. And I grew up with seeing my parents owning their own business, and with the good, bad, and ugly that comes with owning your own business. And I saw from early on, when my dad had challenges with the workers, that he got really, really upset, and he started to scream when something was damaged. And I think it was just not a very good way to be. But at the time, of course, he didn't know any better. And in 2003, I decided to move to Canada. And this was my sense of adventure. I wanted to learn the language better. And I had an opportunity to start working with Magna International, a big automotive supplier. And this is really where I discovered my passion for the manufacturing industry. I started to realize that management and the workers have both very unique challenges, but oftentimes they don't understand each other's world. And I became fascinated by it. And I only worked 3 years at Magnum. But I have to thank really Magna for discovering this passion of mine. And by the end of 2006, I lost my job due to restructuring, and I started my own business, solely focusing on the people in the manufacturing industry. And this was in January 2007. And here's a funny story to this. Of course, I didn't have any clients, so I made probably 130 cold calls a week, and I gave money back guarantee to people so that they would hire me. And then I had the opportunity to work in an automotive company, and the general manager said to me, "Why don't you work with my maintenance guys? If you get out there alive, then I hire you to do more work." So I was hired to do a 1 day workshop, and I didn't quite understand his comment. So I just went in and I wanted to make a difference for them. And I did a 1 day communication seminar, and they absolutely loved it. And the general manager was astounded and said, "What did you do with my people?" And it was really just understanding their challenges and giving them tools and techniques on how to interact better with other departments and even with each other. So this was my first touch point with the maintenance crew, and the general manager hired me after. But really, what he explained to me was that the maintenance people are so difficult to lead. And of course, they are difficult to lead because they are skilled workers. And people who know their stuff really well, they are more difficult to lead. And this would require the general manager to step up a little bit in order to engage them at a different level. So this is a little bit my story. And yeah, I work at all levels in the manufacturing industry. I do leadership coaching with high-level executives, middle management. I do work with supervisors at the moment, webinars, of course, because real workshops are not possible. And I used to do a lot of work also with shop floor employees. So I really have a good understanding what people go through at different levels. Now, Heather, if you would go to the next slide. So these are our awareness objectives today. We will explore a little bit why self-awareness gives you power, recognize your thought process and why this is even important. And then we'll practice simple communication tools to become an influencer, which means really to connect better with other people. And how awesome would it be if you get people to do what you want them to do, not because they have to, but because they want to. And this should be really your goal. Okay, Heather, you can go to the next slide. So I have created a rule of thumb. This really is based on my whole work that I do with people. When it comes to communication, it all starts with your thought process. So to give you a simple example, if I don't like you, I will speak differently to you than if I would. Or when I'm very stressed, I become a very different person, and I will also communicate differently. I always encourage people to observe people closely and start thinking about how they think. Now, you can say to me, "Karen, I'm not a mind reader. What are you talking about?" No, I didn't ask you to think about what they think. I asked you to observe them how they think. Now, how would you do that? The thoughts run through a person's face. So you can see, you can observe if they are frustrated, if they are stressed, and pay close attention to that, especially now during times of COVID. Many people have challenges at home for different reasons. And so it really pays off to take a look at that. And I will come back to the thoughts a little bit later and make you think why this is important. Then, of course, I look at people's habits. I think most people go to work, they are more focused on their to-do list and what they have to go get done, and not so much about how to be when they come to work. What does this mean? Set your intention how you enter the workplace. Um, do you go in not looking left and right and acknowledging anyone? Or do you walk in and greet people and ask them how they are doing and be a little bit connected with them? The U stands for understanding emotions. When emotions are high, intelligence is low. So knowing how to deal with this when you get upset, when another person upset, is also super important. And I tell you, the only way to win with a person who is angry and highly emotional is not to play. You cannot win because they simply cannot think straight at the moment. And even if you have all the facts and figures to convince them, it won't sink in. So just go back later when they calm down. The fourth thing is mindset. Observe people if they have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. Fixed mindset, those are the people who don't want to try anything new because they are so afraid to fail. People with a growth mindset, they see mistakes as an opportunity to learn and to grow. And last but not least, the belief system is important. Now, you may know things such as phrases, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's a belief that may hold you back in learning something new. First of all, nobody here on this webinar is a dog. So of course you can learn. It's just a skill like any other. And when you have the tools and techniques with a little bit of practice, you will get better and better. Now, can you change beliefs? Of course you can. A belief is nothing else than a thought that you keep thinking over and over again. So it's important to challenge those thoughts if they are still really true for you, and then start thinking different thoughts. So this is really the basis of my work. And but also very important for you, now we go a little bit deeper into influencing people. Heather, could you go to the next slide? Perfect. So what I would like you to do now is take a pen in your hand. If you are right-handed, if your right hand is your dominant hand, put the pen in the left hand. If the left hand is your dominant hand, put the pen in your right hand. And now I would like you to sign your name with the less dominant hand. Sign your name. And I would like to ask you what the first thing was that came to your mind when I asked you to write with the other hand. And maybe you type it in the chat box. And Heather, if you could tell me what people write down. what comes to mind, this would be awesome.
Yeah, waiting on responses. I know I thought, oh no, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah, please don't be shy to write down what is the first thing that comes to mind.
Adrian says uncomfortable, unnatural. Steven says, but why? Harold says that's going to be ugly. He said, how am I going to hold the pen properly? Ahmed said, this is my name, but now it's difficult.
Okay.
Great
Awesome.
challenge.
Anything else?
Yeah, uncomfortable, great challenge. I thought it would be hard. Maybe it wasn't so hard for you, but it was for me. And that's all the answers we have right now.
Okay, awesome. So this is just the best way to show you how people initially react to change. I asked you to change something and thoughts pop in your mind. And this will be the same with the people you work with, or you have to communicate change in plans. And the first thing that pops into their mind is some kind of emotion. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Or, oh my God, this, like one person said, this is going to be ugly, right? Or, oh no, this is uncomfortable. We can't do that. And the thought process really plays a big role in anything that we are trying to achieve. So, very, very important to explore with people and to allow them to share what they think about the change and how to make it happen, and to really use positive language, and to let them know, first of all, sometimes changes come from the top. They come from the president, from top management. Uh, the important thing is to determine, do I have control over this or no? If I don't have to control over it, and this is just something top management wants, I gotta learn to live with it and gotta make the best of it. So, to have conversations about how people feel about this is initially very important, because emotionally they go through something that is called emotional change curve. And it really starts with shock, and then people get in denial and they become super frustrated, and then they may think about it, and then they say maybe it's not that bad, and then they get out of this emotional change. And people go through those stages at a different pace. So very important for you to understand that if you want to move people forward. And I know in the past, and in some companies this is unfortunately still the case, where people say there is no room for emotions at work. This is just crazy, because we are all emotional beings. And no matter what you feel, if this is anger, frustration, happiness, uh, people feel, and they should be allowed to feel. And it's very powerful if you learn how to move people through this kind of emotional state. Heather, if you would go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the iceberg theory, because in my experience in the manufacturing industry, unfortunately, there is a lot of anger and frustration in people. Now, anger is a secondary emotion. What does this mean? Like with an iceberg, before a person gets angry, there is there's a lot of things that happen internally. So people are even afraid, anxious about something. They feel always super stressed. Uh, they are helpless. They may feel guilty about something. They feel hurt because the way they are treated. They feel rejected. And then over the course of a lifetime, uh, they something happens internally, and they become just frustrated every day when they come to work because everything evolves around problems and issues. Now, Heather, if you would do another click here on the slide, one click, yeah. So now you have to make the decision. Do I want to get better? Do I want to master, to become a better communicator? Or Heather, if you would click again, over the course of a lifetime, you will become bitter. And I don't have to prove the point. I assume we all know people who have become really, really bitter. But it doesn't have to be this way if you become aware of how you feel and know how to change that. Now, at the beginning, when I spoke about the objectives, I said there is a lot of power in it when you become more self-aware. And this is exactly what I mean. Um, Listen, we all feel frustrated and angry at certain times in our life. That is okay. The challenge is if you start feeling frustrated and angry every single day, because this emotional state can become a habit. And the quality of your life really depends on where you live emotionally most of the time, if this makes any sense. Now, Heather, if you can go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about thoughts and what they have to do with influencing people. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those thoughts tend to be negative. I am not smart enough. I am not good enough. This project will never work out. Oh my God, we are in deep trouble. Those are thoughts that can constantly pop into your head. Now, probably all of you have heard before about the power of positive thinking. And listen, there is just not always a place for it. I don't want to talk to you about think positive and everything is on fire. This just doesn't work. But I want you to challenge your thought process and become more aware of how you think and how the people around you think. Um, is everything terrible, or can they learn to find the good in the bad? So being optimistic is super, super important. Now, Heather, if you can click again. 60% of the people think in terms of what they want to get away from. Uh, I, I, I don't, I cannot deal with those problems. I don't like this. I don't want this. So people are very certain about what they don't want, don't like, and don't have. And they speak about this all day long. Now, Heather, if you would click again, 40% of the people think in terms of where they want to get to. What do they want? What is important for them? Now, to give you a simple example of what this could mean, when you have a team, people get told what they shouldn't be doing. So you shouldn't come late. You shouldn't miss the deadline. You shouldn't be doing this. Now, the more you talk about what people shouldn't be doing, the more they focus on that, and it creates negative energy. So the first takeaway from this webinar is write down what you expect from your team members. Your expectations have to be crystal clear, and it has to be communicated in a positive way. So instead of saying, don't be late, say, I want you to be on time. Speak about the behavior and not about the person. So, for example, you could say, being late is unacceptable on my team. I want you to be on time. So, speaking about the behavior is important, because if you say to a person, you are late all the time, the person internalizes it and then starts thinking there is no way out. They are late all the time, and it becomes part of their identity, which is not a good thing. People can change their behavior if you speak more about the behavior. So, really, really important to challenge the thought process. And even if something bad happens, start thinking about what's good about this. What can we learn from this situation? And maybe we can even invent something that makes everything a lot better than before this has happened. Heather, if you can go to the next slide. Now, all of you have heard about the iPhone, of course, and I would think that none of you have heard about the iMap before. And this is what I'm going to explain to you now. Just imagine every person is on their own island, which means every person has their own values, their own thought process, needs, wants, motivations. And when our islands are very far from each other, which means somebody who grew up, let's say, in Eastern Europe would have like very, very different beliefs than someone who grew up in Western Europe, if this makes any sense. So the challenge becomes a challenge when we speak to someone where really the way how we look at the world, the way how we look at the daily challenges is very, very different. And when I think that the other person doesn't understand what I want, then many times we become upset about it. Now, I don't want you to become upset about it. I want you to learn, build a bridge, build rapport with the person. So if somebody really disagrees with you, instead of becoming furious, I want you to become curious. Ask questions. Ask them why they think this is a better way of doing things, rather than cutting them off, because you may lose the opportunity to have a really good conversation and to find out something that you may have missed. So many times we don't even listen to what another person has to say, and this is obviously not good. And a big part of influencing other people is really understanding what they want, what they need, and what they're afraid of. So, in other words, you cannot influence a person if you just think about yourself, what you want. You can influence another person if you step into their world and start thinking, what is this person afraid of? Maybe they are afraid of learning a new system. Maybe they think I'm too old to learn this new technology. So in your mind, write down what they could be afraid of, because then you can address it. And on the flip side, start thinking what's important for them. Maybe job security is important for them. maybe earning a bonus at the end of the year is important for them. So you really, really have to understand what counts for the other person. Now, a different way of explaining this is, Heather, if you can go to the next slide. Everybody listens to the same radio channel, WIIFM. And Heather, if you click again, this stands for what's in it for me. So if you want to move another person, and even you may want to communicate to your boss, maybe you have an awesome idea, you have to keep this in mind. What is your boss afraid of? And what does your boss want? So, and then you have to build a business case so that it matches what's important for your boss. This is such an important concept to keep in mind. And now this may sound really overwhelming to you, but really it's not. All it takes is to become interested in the people around you and start asking more questions rather than thinking, I want that we do it this way, and not letting any other thoughts in. Heda, if you could go to the next slide. You see a picture here. And I wanted to write down in the chat box, like just in a few words, what you see on this picture. There's no right and wrong. So just the initial thought on what you see, please write it in the chat box. And I would ask Heather again to read what people see.
Will do. I see some people typing, but no answers yet. Someone repeated your "become curious, not furious" line as well, saying that they loved it. So that resonated. All right, we have answers here. A bright outcome, future looking forward.
Okay.
I see people talking to each other. A broken up square.
Okay.
Armageddon. a geometric storm.
Okay.
I see some people and some rocks that may fall on them. Those are our answers so far.
Okay, awesome. So now we all look at the same picture. So how come that we get different answers? And Heather, if you can click again on the slide, then you would see that we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Like one person sees a storm, the other person sees a bright future. The next person sees rocks falling down. I, for example, see mirrors in the sky and, a better future. So everybody sees things differently. And this is always a challenge. When you communicate something to 20 people, then 20 people may walk out of the room or right now from your online meeting, and they have completely different thoughts in their head based on what fits into their worldview. So that's why this is so important. Now, Heather, if you can go to the next slide, I really want to introduce you a little bit to the different personality styles. And some of you may have already have done tests on true colors. I mean, there are so many personality tests, but honestly, this is something that I use with people in the manufacturing industry, and it works so well because it's so simple and it gives you a brief overview of really the differences in people. Heather, if you can go to the next slide. Let's take a look. So we have those 4 different personality styles. First of all, we have them all within us, but 1 or 2 stand out. They are dominant. This is how we operate on a daily basis. In professions with in technical fields, we have a lot of analytical people in the manufacturing industry. A lot of analytical people because they love problem solving. So this is a profession they chose to go into. Now the analysts, what is important for them? Abstract thinking. They really like to explore things. They like to solve problems. They are perfectionists. They want to get things right. They are more serious and they like rather independently than in a team. So when people who are analysts come to my webinars, I can tell right away, especially when they get sent by their boss, they look at me and like they're sitting like this and what am I doing here? I hate being here. This has absolutely no value to me. This can be the initial attitude, how they come. And all I do is observing people's faces to recognize who is in my room. Because I know they don't dislike me. How can they dislike me? They haven't even met me. They dislike that they don't understand how this could possibly add value to their day-to-day work. So those are the analysts. Now, another click, Heather, please. Then we have the artists. Artist doesn't mean that you have to be a painter or that you have to be able to sing. It just has to do with the way how those people are. They are very action oriented. They are risk takers. They like to work hands on. They like to have fun at work. They don't even go to work if it's not fun. They are very competitive and they are very confident. So very different than to the analyst. An analyst would never look at work as fun. Fun is something outside of work, but they don't mix it. The artist totally mixes it. They like to have fun at work. Now another click, Heather. The taskmaster, those are our super organized people. I always say they are the backbone of any organization. They are responsible for the policies, for the procedures, for processes, so that everything goes in a specific order. They definitely value order and organization. They are very detailed. They value stability. They have a parental nature, so they like to look after their team members. Sometimes they may have a tendency to micromanagement because they think they know the ideal way of doing things. And they are very, very dependable. The taskmasters are the people who like to create lists and check off the list. So this gives them a huge sense of accomplishment. And if this speaks to you and I would go and visit you at home and you're a taskmaster and I come into your garage, probably everything is labeled. Very different to the artist. They would never label anything. So this is quite opposite personality types. And then another click, Heather, last but not least, we have the good buddies at work. Those are our relationship people. The main reason why they go to work are the people. They love the social environment, probably really hard if they cannot go to work at the moment because social interaction is super important for them. They are in general very optimistic, inspirational. They seek harmony. They do not like conflict at all. Very enthusiastic people, and they like to make a difference. Now, what I would like you to do now is take a look at this and write down which one is most likely like you. And like I said, we have all four within us, but pick either one or two and write them in the chat box and write also in it what is the main reason why you go to work every day or why you do what you do. what is your biggest motivator?
We have somebody who thinks they're an analyst.
Uh-huh. And why does this analyst likes to come to work every day? What is the main thing?
We have an artist. I'll follow up on the analyst and the artist why once we hear. We have someone who's an analyst and a taskmaster. Motivation is the value of order.
The value of order, okay.
Our analyst's reason is to contribute and help the company move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then our artist is motivated to learn new things at work.
Okay. So now the reason why I wanted you to introduce you to this is it is impossible to influence other people if you don't understand what's important for you. That's why it is so critical to start thinking about what are my motivators, what do I need at work, what is important. And it's important to have different people at work. Now, for the analyst, I can tell you straight up, the easiest way would be having no people at work because it would make life a whole lot easier for them. Uh, and but this is just not good, because to give you a simple example, if we would have only good buddies at work, there would be only socializing going on, lots of talking, but not much else. However, we need the good buddies because those are the people who are always willing to listen and to help. If we would have only analysts, it would be way too serious and nobody would talk to each other. The taskmasters, there would be only policies and procedures, there wouldn't be enough creativity. And the artists, they are really important because they are willing to take risks, they are willing to try new things, they are motivated by change and by uncertainty. And really what makes a company work is the diversity of thought. And this is so, so important. Now, let me just take a look at the time here because I don't want to go too much over time. Heather, if you can move forward and move, and again, we did this already, to the stressors, and just bring them all up at once. So you see, even what's stressful for one person is not stressful for the other. So, for example, if you know that somebody in front of you is an analyst, I'm not going to engage this person at work with small talk about the weather and what I did on the weekend, because this is stressful. I am keeping them now from their work. They don't like that. Meanwhile, a good buddy needs that. It's stressful for them if they have no social interaction. For an artist, it's stressful if there is too much detail. They don't like that, or if there is no challenge for them at work. And for a taskmaster, it's stressful when people come to a meeting and they are always late, or when they are not prepared for a meeting. So very, very important to understand that. Now, Heather, move on to the next slide. So what is important for you is really to understand there is a winning formula in everything that you go through on a daily basis. The actual situation that you encounter is only 10%. 90% is how you respond to it. Now, in the manufacturing industry, there's a lot of firefighting. And when I work with companies and I come in, I look at it, and sometimes people run around like chicken with their head cut off. And it's really this nervous energy of putting out fires at different places. But what I want you to consider and actually put into practice next time when you encounter a challenging situation, take a deep breath. Don't react in the moment and start thinking before you respond. Even if somebody, is upset with you, take a deep breath and start thinking before going right back at the person. Why do I say that? When you react, when you are in the moment, when you are emotional, uh, you are in your emotional mind. You cannot think straight. And if you take a deep breath, it really helps you to collect your thoughts and tap into your intelligent mind. And that's where you want to be. Now, Heather, if you can go to the next slide. Now, how to get started? I know I gave you a lot of information, but I want to simplify it for you. When you leave this webinar today, have the intention to become more interested in the people around you. Ask them questions, interact with them, have a good conversation, and really try to listen. Most people, they really don't listen. They just wait until the person said something and they already wait what they can say after. If you can click again. Number 2 would be what I mentioned earlier. Be curious rather than furious. It doesn't serve you when you get upset. You get nowhere. You just create negative energy and you create enemies along the way. Deep breath again and ask people questions. So important. Also at home, right? You may get upset about your children and your spouse. Become curious. Understand what's going on in their world before you snap. Number 3, think before you speak. And think stands for asking yourself, is this really true or am I making an assumption? Is it helpful? Is it intriguing for the other person? Is it necessary when I say that? And is it kind? When you get upset with other people and they feel put down, you can't influence them. And number 4, Heather, another click. WIIFM. Always speak in terms of what's important to the other person. If you go to a meeting, prepare yourself and start thinking about what do you want the outcome to be? What do you want people to think, feel, and do after the meeting is done? Think about the outcome, think about what they want, what they're afraid of, and I guarantee you, you will have a lot of success influencing other people. And now to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. Number 5, use positive language. Speak about what you want with your team members. Avoid saying, I don't want you to do this. Because this is where the energy goes. You want people's energy to go on what you want to see. And now we go to the final slide. The final thought for today is the key to successful leadership today is influence, not authority. So for real leadership, you don't need a title. You can influence people with words. That's really a very important message that I want to give you today. And now I would like to open up the floor for questions. Use me as a resource. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Check out my website, YouTube channel. I post weekly videos. Subscribe to the channel. You can learn along the way. And you can also connect with me on Facebook if you are on there. And now I hope to get some good questions from you. I know sometimes people are shy to ask questions, so I hope this will be different in this community.
I hope so. Everyone's been so active participating today. Thank you so much to our audience, and thank you, Karen, for that wonderful presentation. I see we have someone typing. I'll ask, apologies, I have some sirens in the background here. I'll ask you, I'm wondering what's kind of one real life example where you've experienced some kind of conflict and how your kind of strategy for this language of influence, this way of thinking helped overcome that.
Yeah, there are many examples. I actually like the first thing is to see conflict as a positive. You don't want people around you who agree with everything you say. So there is a lot of benefit in conflict because people point out things that could possibly go wrong, and it's important to explore that. Now, language of influence is really you want to avoid that things escalate, that people start yelling at each other because they are just not in agreement. And I always encourage people to take the high road, even if a person, let's say, yells at you. Um, Take a deep breath. I know the initial reaction is to shoot right back at them, uh, but take a deep breath and stay calm and say, I don't appreciate how you speak to me right now. Can we continue this conversation a little bit later? Boom. And leave it like that. But that's challenging, right? So, and it's something that needs to be practiced. But what I would say, I have seen many times when people get into the mode of asking questions and get into a good dialogue, a lot of good things start to happen.
It's awesome. Yeah, something similar that my boss and my mentor has taught me is respond, don't react, right? So address the situation, save your reaction and the emotional piece for it for later until the situation is resolved, right?
Yes.
I got another question in the chat here that says, what about the SWOT, strength, weakness, opinion, threat model? How might it fit into this picture?
Just to clarify a little bit, like the SWOT analysis could be done for the individual himself or herself, right? So first off, I would say it's more important to focus on people's strengths than on their weaknesses. So what do I mean by that? I take myself as an example. If I would apply for a job and I would get hired for a finance position, my boss probably wouldn't be very happy with me because I'm better with people than with numbers. So sometimes people sit in the wrong seat of the bus, and you can't take, let's say, an artist who is not necessarily detail oriented and put him all day in populating spreadsheet is if this is not his or her strength. So I think this is how it fits into it, if this is what was meant. So if not, the person can clarify a little bit further.
Yeah. I see they're typing. But we do have another question here. I'll give them one more second. All right. We have another question here that says, how do you develop the self-belief to promote your position on a matter with confidence?
Say this again. How
do you develop the self-belief to promote your position on a matter with confidence?
Yeah, so I always argue, I actually speak to a university next week, that believing in yourself is more important than any title will ever bring you. So how do you develop it? First off, I give you one of my super simple strategies. You got to convince yourself first, which means start telling yourself what you want to believe about yourself. So when I moved to Canada, I didn't have a lot of confidence, partially because of language skills and, new country. And so I told myself every single day, up to 10 times, I would stand in front of the mirror. I would tell myself, I look great, I feel great, I'm smart, I have important knowledge to share. Those were my 4 things that I kept telling myself over and over again out loud. Now, why is this important? Your brain is like a computer and the input is your choice. So many of us tell ourselves a story where we put ourselves down, has a lot to do with the thought process. And it's like gardening, right? You got to work on those weeds. The weeds, which are our negative thoughts, they show up automatically. You don't have to do anything about it. But if you want to get different thoughts, you have to condition yourself until you truly start believing it. So this is what advice I would give. Tell yourself what you want to believe yourself every single day. In the car, at home, find a place, do it daily.
Wonderful. I'll ask one final question here that says, how can we influence people if either they don't trust us or maybe have displayed lack of integrity before? A challenging one.
Yeah. So trust is the foundation of everything, right? So if management says one thing and they do another, people figure this out fairly quickly. And again, I can give the example of a personal relationship, right? Trust is the foundation, because if I go out in the evening and my husband is afraid, I don't know, I'm not sure what she's gonna do tonight, that's already a challenge. So I would definitely say build a foundation of trust by don't say things that you don't do just because it sounds good. Um, uh, that's just it. And don't hide things from people. Be transparent as much as you can. That's so important. And then what was the other thing? If the person was what?
Showing lack of integrity.
Showing lack of integrity.
So maybe you don't trust them.
Yeah. Again, it comes back again. So why is the person showing lack of integrity? Could also come down to lack of performance management. Comes back to the manager again. So maybe you have the perspective the person has no integrity because he or she didn't meet the deadline. But what are you doing about it? Like, is there anything that you can do differently? And, I really want to stress this one point. If you want people to get better, you have to get better. If you want people to change certain things, you have to start changing. It goes hand in hand.
Wonderful. I think that's an awesome note to end on. Thank you so much once again to our audience for being super engaged with our activities throughout the presentation, asking some thoughtful questions there. And Karen, thank you one more time for taking the time out of your schedule to be here with all of us today. It's been a wonderful presentation, despite some technical difficulties at the start, and I'm excited to continue working with you in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much for everyone for attending, and please feel free to ask me any questions on LinkedIn if you didn't get to them today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.